is when he was young, he would punch himself out a lot because he would just go balls to the walls. When he was in his 40s in his second return, he was real calculated. He paced himself. He picked his shots. I felt like he was a better fighter in his 40s. But that's the big thing when you hit that age. Your cardio, for whatever reason, just isn't the same as a young man.
About the time you hit 32, you start going down. And
Yeah.
and I remember, because I started fighting at 19 years old. I'm about to be 35, and I can tell you for a fact, 19-year-old me would get the fuck stomped out of him by 34, 35-year-old me, but only because I know different things. That young kid, he's in there, he's boom, 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 boom. And that old me's like, nope, boom, bam, boom,
Yep.
bam. And gonna hurt him.
Much more calculated. As you age, you're more calculated. You pick your shots better.
Yep.
And that's important for being a fighter. Like you said, when I was younger, I was more balls to the wall, but I noticed that I was getting tired during some of these exchanges. So I started being a little more picky in what I threw. And I try to relay that to the young guys because, you're going to have that opponent that you can't take out, that you got to go the distance with. And got to have cardio to do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
But
Chris.
I want to make sure. Oh, go ahead, brother.
If you look, you remember Kimbo Slice versus Dada 5000. What happened?
Yeah, they both really fatigued.
At
Both
the end of the fight, they couldn't move.
Yep. And I'll be honest, what I think happened there, this is just my opinion. I don't believe for 1 second that, and in fact, I know those guys weren't in horrible shape, my friend.
They
We've
weren't
seen
drug
big
tested either.
UFC fighters come in and gas. They both were fighting for the king of Miami.
Yeah.
That was the big script. This is for the king of the streets of Miami. There was a lot of pressure on them, and they knew everybody in their hometown was watching. And I think they both had adrenaline dumps. I
Yep.
really believe that. So they come out and they feel like the pressure got to them. And what I try to tell young fighters is you got to look at this as a game. Don't look. And what I mean by a game is this. When I go play football, I know it's going to be rough. I know I'm going to get hit hard. I know there's a danger of getting injured, but it's still a game. Okay.
That's right.
When you take these fights and you make them real personal and you let your anger get involved, it does something to your adrenaline. And for me, I just try to, like, if you watch old Chuck Liddell, they called him the Iceman. Not because he was knocking people out, because Chuck would come out and he seemed almost detached. He would just come out and he just picked his shots and he looked like a serial killer. And I think that was his way of detaching himself and basing his cardio. That's
Yeah.
just a theory.
Yeah. Well, that makes perfect sense because, I mean, if you look at it and you think about it like this, you see these great big ass, like Dave Batista looking people that they have no stamina whatsoever because they have so much muscle that their
Yep.
body can't pump oxygen to all of that muscle at one time. That's why
Yep.
that little skinny guy, back to what we was talking about earlier, that little skinny guy will go in there and light his ass up and hit him 5 times before he realizes that he's hit.
Well, I'll tell you, brother, when I was getting my most knockouts, I was a big, strong, I was powerlifting, but I realized something quickly. I was getting tired quick, and it was by sheer luck that I managed to knock people out before I got too tired. Finally, I ran into somebody in my last MMA fight that I couldn't knock out, and I gassed really, really bad. And he kept throwing teeps, and he caught me with a couple straight body kicks, etc. And I ran out of gas. And that's when I said, man, I got to get some of this size off of me, So at that time, I weighed about 233, and I was just massive. I lost since then about 38 pounds, and I don't get tired like I used to. You know.
Yep. Because I walk at 200 pounds, but I fight at 155. And I'll tell you what, if you spar with me in the gym at 200 pounds and then spar with me at 155, you're going to ask what the hell happened, because
Yeah.
that 155 guy is dancing around, running around, moving, blah, 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 blah. That 200-pound guy, go ahead, go to bam,
Yep.
bam.
Yep.
Because I don't have that same dexterity to my body as what I
Right.
would have if I had that lesser weight on there.
Well, I tell you, man, the biggest lesson I learned from boxing, and I try to tell the young guys, they'll come in and they'll ask me about the strength training. Now, a lot of old school boxers, they say, "Oh, we don't lift no weights. We don't." Well, if you go look, that's outdated, because you'll see Tyson Fury deadlifting, bench pressing. You'll see Anthony Joshua. You can weight lift, you can't body build.
That's
There's a
right.
difference. And what we do is we strength train very low volume, so you're not packing on a bunch of muscle,
That's
but
right.
you're packing on strength. You're strengthening your joints,
Strengthening
etc.
your range of motion.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
right. If you can stay strong doing these things and doing all this, then you'll be able to fight. But them bodybuilders, they get their stuff so big that their muscles get too tight. And that's whenever you see somebody great big, Bob Sapp, go to throw an overhand left and he tears his whole pectoral muscle from his chest
Yep.
because he has no dexterity and he reached way too back far to throw it to begin with. And
And
that's why you
you
see
see
people
the
like Eddie Hall. If Eddie Hall was to go in and even box Jake Paul, what do you
yeah,
think's going to happen?
yeah, he'll get picked apart, dude. He'll get
Picked
picked apart.
apart because he can't move. But if he
Yeah.
hits you, he's going to fuck you up.
You
But
see where he knocked he fought those two dudes. I said, damn. You know,
145-pound guys against 350-pound Eddie.
yeah. But I always tell my guys, if they go up against somebody that looks a good bit more powerful, I say just make him miss. Make him miss a lot. He's going to get tired.
Hit
And a
his
guy like
body.
Eddie Hall, and I know this is easy to say, but if I had to fight an Eddie Hall, my game plan would be make him miss as much as I can for the first round, because guys like him load up. They'll load
Mm-hmm.
up on punches, and missing those loaded up shots gasses you. You
It's
know.
just like playing Undisputed on the PlayStation 5 when you have no
Yep.
Oh
stamina
my
left after
God.
2 shots.
Yep.
It's the same principle. It really is. It really is.
What's that dude? Is his name Bradley Martin? The I'm
Yes.
260.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mighty Mouse would fuck him up.
yeah, I
Yeah,
can't wait to
that's
see. I
it.
can't stand that dude. Like, it is fucked up because he came on and was like, "Yo, I love street beef, so on and so forth," and I appreciate that he's a fan,
Mhm.
but I don't care. I see him bullying smaller people, and some of the shit he said. I don't know if he's just doing it to clickbait or if he really believes some of this shit, but. That whole I'm 260 thing, anybody with a brain knows your weight don't matter. All of your muscle only matters to a small degree. And if you believe otherwise, you're delusional.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
Yeah.
there's kids that go to the gym with us that are 125 pounds that fight at 125, 135. They hit just as hard as the 170 guys. And that's
Well,
because they know how to throw a punch.
my son Nate weighs 130, and everybody in our gym despises sparring him. Hard day, he still hits hard for a 130, but you can't hit him. It like he's
Yep.
just like a ninja, and he's quick, speedy. You're trying to touch him. So a guy like Bradley Martin, who's 260, you're never going to be able to touch somebody
Never.
with good speed. You know?
Never.
Hey, hey, I have a question. This
Sure,
been on my mind for a while about
sure.
the wall you got. I've
Yep.
noticed that I've been reading about OG Rampage. Like he wants you to put him on the wall. What's the deal with him? He wants to be on that wall.
So Rampage, I'm gonna tell y'all up front that I like Rampage. Okay, Rampage is a troll. Um, I promise y'all, he's not a bad guy. He's really not. And I entertain Rampage probably more than I should. But what I love about Rampage is this: his first 8 fights, he fought killers in our yard. His first 3 fights, he fought against a guy named King Leo. King Leo back then was knocking everybody out.
I watched
Um,
those.
yeah,
Leonidas. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
So Rampage fought him his first 3 fights. Um, I can't even remember all the guys, but he fought a bunch of guys that were like Wall of Famers. And at one point, he came to me and he was like, Face, I want this guy. I said, Rampage, you've earned an easy fight. He said, I don't want no easy fights. He said, throw me against the worst guys you got. So that's what we did. And he said, man, you threw me against all these killers. Shouldn't I get some love for that? And I said, well, unfortunately, Rampage, that's not how our wall works. And he said, well, look, I want to do this 3 versus 3 tag team with you and your sons. And really, it was more a show. Um, we put on 16-ounce gloves. Usually, the yard, we fight in 12s. We put on 16s, and we did tag team. But we're going to put him on the wall. I feel like Rampage, if you look at all the guys he's fought, I feel like he's earned it, personally. Because
Yeah.
Street Beefs is not just about your record. This isn't pro or even amateur. This is about your heart, too. And Rampage has shown good heart.
Definitely.
If that
And
answers your question.
and how are you guys implicating your new belt system? I seen you guys made a post about that the other day. I didn't get to delve into it too much because I was working, so like I kind of missed it. But
So we felt like we had a few too many belts, which is strange because when we first started, we only had 2, under 200 and over 200. And at that time, I said, well, we got to get a little more diverse. So I think we went overboard and we had 7 belts for MMA and 7 belts for boxing. And it started to get cluttered and a little confusing. So now I believe we're cutting it down to 3 or 4 belts. Elijah actually handles that. And the goal is to streamline it and make it a little more interesting and easy to follow for the fans. So I believe it'll be 4. I want to say 4 belts total. There'll be 2 for 185 and over 205, and 2 for under 185 and then under 155. And I think people say, "Well, man, that'll leave like 20-pound weight gaps." Listen, this isn't sanctioned fighting, And when I started Street Beefs, I said that I wanted it to have the feel of a street fight with gloves and a referee. And in a street fight, you're not necessarily going to get a guy your size all the time. So now it'll still be fairly close. You're not going to see a 135 fighting a 285, but
right.
there will be some discrepancy in the weight. So check back with me, in a couple weeks. Maybe I'll come back on and update y'all.
Yeah, I remember back in the day when I first started fighting, they fucking let you fight anybody. I fought a guy who was 235 pounds and I weighed 155, and I kicked him in the head so fucking hard I broke my whole top part of my foot, but I knocked his big ass out.
Hey, that was when MMA was the wild, wild west, brother.
Yeah,
and I
the
remember
golden
those
days.
when you and I was talking the other day and you was telling me about fights that weren't on your record.
Mhm.
I know because I had an old boxing coach who fought a bunch of MMA matches that I attended over half of them. Yet they're not on his record, buddy. And
Yup.
and that's how it was back then, which I felt like that was the fun days of MMA, but
Definitely.
it was definitely the wild, wild west, and you could get thrown in there with anybody.
Yeah, you could
You
show up
know,
to a state fair that had a fucking tough man contest, and the next thing you know, you're in there fighting.
that's right.
I did that a lot. I
Hey.
fought at VFWs and shit. I fought at a VFW in Centralia, Illinois, and I watched a guy that was 6'7" at 170 pounds fight another guy that was 6'5" at 170 pounds. He grabbed him by the shins and tree topped him, but his fucking head went through the light, and they had to stop the show and clean everything up, and it was all terrible.
Well, listen, man, it's kind of like with UFC. I probably am in the minority with this, but I liked the old UFC better. I did. When it was truly a clash of styles, like back then, now any guy that comes in that cage knows a little bit of everything. Okay. But back then, truly, if it said it was a boxer versus a kickboxer, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And they even had a sumo wrestler at one point. I just thought it was really cool. But um, now it's kind of gotten a little more vanilla to the sense that all of these guys are trained in MMA, and I don't think you have the style differences quite as much that you had back then.
Definitely, definitely. What's up, Big Joe Elmore? How you doing, brother?
What's up, Joe?
Joe
Joe
Elmore says
Elmore.
hello.
That's
Yeah.
my guy right there.
I love Joe.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. So, I love you guys. I love what you guys are doing for Street Beefs and for the family and community. Get the guys or women that been having their ups and downs. I believe that Street Beef has helped them get it where they need to be at. Street Beef's been a good family for everybody. So, give us a little bit more about how Street Beefs is doing better for everybody.
You mean as far as how it's helping people do better in life, or how it's grown?
Better in life. Better in
I think,
life.
yeah.
So that's something I've actually talked about several times. The way it happens, and I just literally seen this happen in real life over the last 6 months. These young fighters, some of them will come in and they're not a fighter at first. They're just a street guy who wants to try his hand. Come in and he gets beat, and he says, "Man, the guy that beat me had good cardio. He looked muscular. He trains at a gym. I want to do that." So then they'll start working out a little. Then they'll get into it a little more. Then they join a gym. Then they come back and they do better their second fight. And they're like, "Hey, that worked. I want to get more into this." And suddenly you see this guy who, when he came through the door, smoked cigarettes. He drank. He didn't go to a gym. 6 months later, he's going to a gym. He's getting in shape. He's eating better. And I've seen this repeatedly. But secondly, we've had guys in the group who they come in and they say little stuff about what they're doing in the streets, or, "Hey, I'm going over here smoking weed," or, "I'm going to go drink." And other people are like, "Dude, you're killing yourself. What are you doing? Relax. Go work out. Do something better." And it actually influences them. It influences them to try to take steps to do something better. I have seen that story play out dozens of times, and I think that now is the biggest impact Street Beefs is making. It's giving these guys something positive to drive their life, if that makes sense.
It does. It
Joe
does.
Elmore
And
said he's been following Street Beef since it began. He has seen the growth of it and all the people involved, from the crew to the fighters to the yard.
Joe, man, we appreciate you, brother. We were honored when you came out to the yard. I still watch anytime you fight. Anytime one of your fights are online, I watch it, my brother. Love your attitude, love your style, and we appreciate you supporting us too.
Joe
And
is a great
fellas,
guy.
I hate to be rude. I've actually ran over here. I've got another appointment in about 10 minutes.
You're all
So
good.
if there's anything you want to ask me before I roll out, you let me know and I'll ask.
When
I'll
is your
answer.
next Street Beefs event?
So our next event is April 5th. It's always the first Saturday of every month, just FYI. But the next one is April 5th. That's going to be a big one.